So welcome back to the Dashboard Dojo. Today we're doing our second part of a two-part series on getting started with Salesforce Reports. So my name is David Carnes. I also have with me Kyle Shagnon. Kyle, thank you so much for doing all the legwork to make this happen.
Oh, it's all you. Don't flatter me.
All right, so if it's your first time at the dojo, I'm completely borrowing this from my years over in Japan, this idea of a dojo being a place to learn the way. And I guess what I always loved, and I've shared this before, I just love seeing people of all different like ability levels and ages just learning together. So this is where that idea comes from. So we have over 40 hours of recordings on the Dashboard Dojo website. If you click on the link to recordings, you can see all of them. There's a tag cloud. This QR code here is for the part one of this two-part series, but we've got lots and lots of recordings on different topics, and hopefully they'll be helpful to you. So quick agenda, we'll do some introductions. We'll thank our sponsor. We'll dive into what we're going to talk about this week. We'll talk about upcoming dojo topics, and we can take Q&A in the chat throughout. I may not get to your question right away, but it's fine if you want to throw things in there. Thank you for putting the links in the chat, Kyle. That's great. So my name is David Carnes. As I said, I'm the chairman of a company called OpFocus. I've been proud to be part of the MVP program the last few years. And last week I was at Trailblazer DX, and it's always so cool how many people will come up to me and say, are you part of the dojo? Or I see you on the dojo a couple times a month. So I worry about we're gonna have to figure out something for Dreamforce, because it'd be really great to get whoever's there together. So please don't hesitate saying hello. It's so much fun. I actually gave 3 presentations at Trailhead DX, or Trailblazer DX as it's now called, excuse me. And one of them, the picture on the right, was actually one of the keynotes. It was the platform keynote, and I was 1 minute of the 1 hour keynote I was part of. So that was fun. It was first time to do that. But Trailblazer DX to me is perfect. It's probably 5 to 10,000 people. Very, very manageable. Whereas Dreamforce, a few times, for many years, was well up over 150,000 people. It's just massive, massive. And there's just so much good learning at Trailblazer DX. So I was happy to be there. Both Kyle and I work for a company called OpFocus. OpFocus is a consultancy. We work with RevOps teams at SaaS companies to help optimize their operations. We're in our 17th year. It's been a lot of fun all these years. I can't believe we're coming up on 2 decades. So in our getting started with Salesforce reporting 1, which the QR code is to that recording over on the right, we first talked about why bother with reporting. Why do we do this? We talked about the reports tab. We did a walkthrough. We talked about organizing your reports into folders. We talked about running reports and what that means. We looked at the analytics tab, which has been introduced over the last few releases. It's scheduled to become generally available, or GA, in the summer release. We talked about the enhancements to mobile reporting, which are really, really cool. If you haven't played with it, or if you have the mobile app on your phone, but you haven't updated it in a while, be sure to update it and then log back in. Mobile reporting has really gotten like a boost of steroids, a shot of steroids, and is much faster and just more useful, in my opinion. So we also talked about permissions. So there are about 30 profile permissions related to reports and dashboards, and some of them you need to be able to do some of the things that we talked about. And then we talked about creating reports, like even just before you get started, some questions you might want to ask about what the person wants. We talked about report types, which is an incredibly important topic. I got a sneak peek yesterday of some stuff that's being worked on that might be like 4 releases from now. I don't know how far away it'll be, but just overhauling some of the things with report types, which is super cool. We did a quick walk through the report builder. Of course, my browser wasn't behaving properly. We talked about some examples. We'll do more examples today. The one other thing that I mentioned in that last session was that there's still about 75 or so reports that are samples in Classic that you can jump over to Classic, run them. If something's useful to you, save it as So it becomes your report, and then you could use that in Lightning. So Lightning basically has one sample report, and it's about flows, so it's not that useful. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the 4 report formats. So every time you go to create a new report, you select the report type, and then you kind of have a decision to make around structure of that. The 4 report types or report formats are tabular, summary, matrix, and joined. We'll then talk about filters. This is probably the most important skill to build once you sort of get an understanding of where is this data I want to report on in Salesforce, and you select the report type, then you really want to figure out, okay, of the million records in that table in the database, which ones do I want? And you do that through filtering. Which ones do I want to show on the report? We'll talk about the summaries. I think the summaries get overlooked. You can have up to 8 summaries across the top of your report. You can show more of them on the report. There are 5 main summary types. You've got sum, average, max, min, and more recently median was added. And then there are 2 other types. You have the ability to show the row count and sum that. You can also show a count of unique records. So we'll talk about those. Talk about conditional highlighting, formulas, and charts. And for many of these topics, we've already done entire Dōjōs on them, and I have the QR codes for those sessions if you want to dig a little deeper. So let's dive in. Oh,
David.
I forgot the poll again, didn't I?
I'll go ahead.
I need to make
that.
I need to make this bullhorn bigger so that it. So I'm really curious, just for the folks that are on the call today, what is your reporting reality right now in Salesforce? So I'm curious specifically, do you have access to a BI tool? Like, do you have a BI tool? And a BI tool is a business intelligence tool. Think of like a tool like Tableau, CRM Analytics, Domo. There are many of them out there, Power BI, that I'm just curious what percentage of the folks here in the dojo today actually have access to a BI. So be interesting to see what you come up with.
All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds here.
Thank you for doing that, Kyle. All right, so it looks like about half have access to only reports and dashboards. I feel like that's true of a lot of us, right? So companies below a certain size or organizations below a certain size, that's kind of all you're going to get is reports and dashboards, which is why it's so important. And even if you have a BI tool, you may not have access to that. So that we're talking 70% of the people in today's dojo only really get reports and dashboards. And I'm happy for those of you that have a BI tool, the quarter of you that do have a BI tool. And if you get access to it and can play with it, obviously it's just so much more sophisticated. It's really the next step in a journey for reporting is to learn about the power of a BI tool. I don't even care which tool you pick. It's just, it's great to have more power to report across systems. Thank you, Kyle. All right, so let's talk about the 4 report formats. So the simplest is the standard, which is a tabular report, and it's just rows and columns. So basically, you start a report, there are no groups on the report, and that's a tabular report. I had actually thought these names were going to go away when we moved from Classic to Lightning, but I wasn't correct. We're still referring to these as tabular reports, and we'll talk about the other 3 kinds as well. So tabular reports, rows and columns. You can have column summaries on numbers down at the bottom. We can have one type of formula on a tabular report, which is a row level formula, allows you to basically look at the data in a single record and come up with some kind of an output for it using that row level formula. I think of these as, if I just want to like pull a quick list, who are all our clients in Nebraska? Just kind of pulling a quick list, maybe exporting to Excel. You might use this for a holiday greeting card list, or you want to send out a golf putter to your top clients or something like that. You're probably going to use a tabular report. So when you come in to create a new report, so I've got a report started here on cases, and right now you can see that this is not grouped by anything. So the first type of grouping you might do is on rows. And if we add a grouping on rows, then we have the ability to group on columns as well. If you just group on rows, you can group on rows up to 3 times if you wish. But if you don't do anything, this is a tabular report. And what you're going to get for output is just a bunch of rows and columns here. So not too much to talk about with a tabular report. So the next level up, and I think why a lot of us want to create reports, are for summary reports. And these are excellent for summarizing and also collapsing data. So if you're reporting on 2,000 things, and that's the limit of the number of rows you can have in a report in Salesforce, that's an awful lot of scrolling to look at that data. You might want to group it by something, make it a summary report, and then collapse it. And as soon as you add your first grouping to a report, what happens is you get these toggle switches across the bottom, and you could turn off row counts if you don't want to see that. You can also toggle off detail rows. And if you toggle off the detail rows, the report gets collapsed. And sometimes it's just easier to look at the data that way. So again, you can group 1 to 3 times on a summary report. And you can define summary columns. You can create summary formulas. So each summary report can have up to 5 summary formulas. We can use the toggles to toggle off subtotals and grand totals if you wish. You can also add charts. So as soon as you add a grouping to a report, that add chart button wakes up, and we can take advantage of it. As soon as you add a grouping and you sum by something, you can use the conditional formatting as well. So let's go take a look at one. I've got one started here. So this is a report that has a chart, and it's got some summary columns up here at the top. But I'm able to add this chart. This chart button woke up because this report has a grouping, and the grouping is on the stage. And if we go edit this, I'll zoom out just a little bit. We can see that we've added a group. We just used this pull down here, and we added a group on stage. There is another way to move something up to a grouping. In the individual column pull downs, these action menus, it has to be a particular type to do it. I guess I could do it on close date if I wish. So I have this action pull down here on this column, and I could group the rows of the report by this. You can just directly from the preview pane here, I could go ahead and add a grouping, or I could add a grouping from up here. Once you add your first grouping on rows, you now have the ability to group on columns as well. And if you group on columns, then that suddenly becomes what we'll talk about next, which is a matrix report. So we'll stay on the summary report for a moment. This one is just grouped 1 time, and we can see that grouping here. When you add your grouping to this report, you now have the ability to control the sort. And if I scroll down here, you can see that I can actually sort. Right now, the default is it's sorting by stage, and I'm sorting ascending by stage, and I can tell by the arrow next to the group header here that that's sorting ascending. And if I want to flip it, I can choose this choice here to sort descending, but I can also sort by the amount. Since I'm feeding a chart, a funnel chart, I'm actually not going to change the sort on this one, but just so that you know it's there. If you're grouping on a close date or any other kind of a date, you have additional choices for how the grouping appears. Let's actually add one here. This will sort of blow up the, so if I get rid of my chart, and if I come in here and I add something like a close date, of course, the puppy needs to go out right when we start the Dōjō. Oh, he's too funny. But you can see here on this column here for close date, I can group the date by day, calendar week, calendar month, calendar quarter, calendar year, fiscal quarter. And if I scroll, it's not clear when you first see there's no scroll bar, but you do have more choices on this here. All right, I'm going to see if the teenager who came home can let the dog outside. Sorry about this. That's too funny. Okay, sorry about that. That's too funny. All right, so that's sorting and grouping. Again, you could group one more time. But as I mentioned, you have the ability, once you start adding the groupings here, to use these toggles. So as soon as you add your first grouping, you have the ability to show or hide the row counts. I could turn off the detail rows, and that this will actually collapse the report and just making it easier to look at. I don't think this is a great example of a report by having stage on the outside and individual close dates listed on the inside. I'd probably change this and flip around the orientation, but we'll leave it for now.
David, Emily had a question on if
Great.
you have a method you suggest to filter a record count total once the total has been reached within the report.
I read where folks suggest using a roll-up summary field to then filter by. Just wondering if it might be a better option. Record count, filter a record count total. So I'm trying to understand the use case on that. Maybe Emily could add a little bit more to the, like, is the use case that you want to show anything that has more than 3 items in the grouping, or I'm not understand. Oh, okay. So that's what Emily's asking for. That's a good. You could definitely do it with a roll up. But you'd need a child object to do the roll up. So this example, you need to be able to roll up from something. So this example, so let me just get rid of the stage here. And I've got my record counts here. And what we want to do is say, just show the ones that are over 3. I'm sure there's a cool way to do this. So Emily, I'm going to have to bail on this one for right now. I'll noodle on it later today. There might be something obvious that I'm just not thinking of. We were given the ability to add row filters. Row filters is something you can do on a tabular report. Of course, I closed the tabular report that I had open. But if that's a different thing. It's not your question by count specifically, but it is something that's been added in Lightning in the recent releases. So if we, gosh, this zoom is going to kill me. Please go away, large zoom. Okay, so if we just report on something like accounts and come in, so we do have a row limit filter. So this is different than what Emily was asking, but just to throw this out there is a type of filter that I didn't think to talk about today. And the only way that a row limit filter becomes available is if you have to sort by something. So if I sort by type, now that row limit, and I could say, just show the top 100. So to see the top 100 or the bottom 100, you have to sort by something to determine what's the top or the bottom. I guess that's the logic by this now not being grayed out. It's available because I sorted by something. All right, I'm just waffling because I don't have a great answer for Emily. So the third type of report format that's available to us is a matrix report. This is obviously a very busy one. I was feeling super clever and added conditional formatting to this. And this is showing 3 colors of additional formatting, and you might highlight zeros to just make them easier to see where the goose eggs for us. But back to the matrix report description, it basically allows you to group once or twice by rows and once or twice by columns. So normally with a summary report, you can go up to 3 groupings, but if it's a matrix, it's up to 2 times on rows and up to 2 times on columns. If you group a report 4 times, it's a very busy report, and you're probably not going to want to show just tons and tons of summary columns on it. It's just hard to look at when there's that much information. So we can define summary columns, we can create summary formulas, we can toggle off on and off the counts, the details, subtotals, grand totals. There is something called stack summaries that I think is kind of cool. It only comes into play when you have more than one summary. So in this example here, I just have 1 summary. The stack summaries isn't really doing anything for me, but I do have an example here. So where did I put it? I thought I had an example open. All right, I'm literally going crazy. But if we come over here and we change this report from this is now a summary report that's grouped twice, and if instead of having status be the second grouping in a summary. If I just move this column down and make it a, the drag and drop is just awful in the browser. All right, so this is going to be easier if I just get rid of it and then add it again. I don't know why the drag and drop is so poor in these browsers, but okay. So now what I have is this is grouped, it's grouped vertically by case owner, it's grouped horizontally by case status. And this, again, we don't really need the stack summaries yet because we only have one summed item. But if we go ahead and add another summed item, such as the average age, suddenly we have two items in here. And in an ideal world, we determine, is this best to see? And it's even more apparent. Let me actually add a couple more. Let's add the max and the median. So now we've got a lot of summaries in each cell, and you can determine with this stack summary, so that stacked means one on top of another, and you can actually toggle that off so that they go side by side. And there may be a reason for this, that the data appears better, that you can just see Bruce's all in one row across the top. I would keep in mind that scrolling left and right on reports isn't necessarily optimal. If you have a lot of group values here, this may be just too wide, and you may want to actually go back and turn off the stack summaries. But we could, toggle off the row count, so then there's one less item here, and so on. So I really like matrix reports. I think they're excellent for a bird's eye view of data. Like this one here is showing open opportunities by industry and by stage. Awesome. All right, so the fourth type of report format is a joined report. This has been around for a long time. I think a lot of us don't really see what this could be used for. It just feels complicated. The magic behind a joined report is literally up in the top left corner. There's a little black triangle that will allow you to change it from what Salesforce calls a standard report, and it's just referred to as a report here, but I think they think of it as a standard report. And we can change it to a joined report. And what that does is it basically allows us to have up to four additional report blocks on the one report. So you literally can have up to 5 reports side by side on the same report using a joined report. You can draw data from both standard and custom objects. You can use summary formulas. You can use cross-block summary formulas, which are super cool, allowing you to do things formula-wise across the blocks. You can add charts. These can feed dashboards. You can export the data to Excel. There's a lot of things you can do with joined reports. I've got a screenshot here of a joined report showing opportunities with products that have 1 opportunities. And we're grouping this by account name. But we have one report block showing 1 opportunities, another report block showing open opportunities, and then even a third report block showing open cases. And all of this is collapsed. It makes it easier to look at. If you show the actual data underneath a joined report, it's just vast. It's a lot to look at. But looking at this collapsed, it's kind of cool that I can see 3 reports on 1 report. And what you can do is you can add a cross-block grouping. In this case, I'm grouping on account name because that's a common element across these 3 report types. So reporting on opportunities with products, opportunities, and cases. So super, super cool. And there are extra superpowers with this. You also have the ability to have more formulas on a joined report. So many, many more formulas. And there could be a reason, if you need more formulas, to just create a joined report with 1 block. Even if you needed a lot more formulas, that would be a way to do it. So I do have a joined report, something that I thought to start. So I basically have a report on opportunities. I've come in here and I've started the filters, and I've said, let's go ahead and let's show this as just closed won opportunities in this particular block. And what I can do now to make this a joined report is come up here, choose joined report, click apply, and I could relabel this block to be one ops. And now it refers to the filters as one ops, and it refers to the columns as one ops. And what I can do is use this add block button to go ahead and now add a second report into my report. So I could, for example, show cases. And now I've got a second block here, and you can see if it's a different report type, Salesforce shows it in a different color. And why don't I show total cases, something like that. And there are no filters on the case report type to start with. So I'm just going to show all cases. But now that I've done that, I can go group across the blocks. And this is what you typically do in a joined report to finish it out. I might come in here and let's do an unusual one. Let's do country. And what I could see here is I can come and sum the amount. Looks like it's already summed. And you can see how already this is so busy. I'm probably going to want to view this collapse. So I'll toggle off the detail rows at the bottom, and this will just show this collapsed. And what I can see is the sum of the amounts and the number of cases. So oddly, we have 2 cases in Belgium, but no customers apparently have bought something in Belgium, no accounts that have a billing country. Well, this is just preview data. So let's look at the real data in this org, which will be strange because it's sample data. But anyway, you can see that we've got these 2 report blocks, and I could even add 3 more blocks. So joined reports are they're great for feeding a scatter chart. So if you wanted to add a chart and do correlations, so are there, should we assume that because a country like Canada has 365 million in sales, we have a higher number of cases? We could use a scatter chart to visually see, who are the ones that buy a lot but don't complain much. And if here we go, it's just slow to draw. So I could do a correlation and change I'll use the sum of the amount for the X, and I might use the total case, and I'll call it correlation of one ops total cases, something like that. And we've got this outlier out here. Sure enough, it's Canada. It's just like so far off the chart. So they've got a huge amount of deals won and a large amount. So this one is a problem. So the US only has 108 million sold, but has more cases. So there's something going on with the must be the slow Americans or something. I'm American, so I'm making fun of myself, but all right. So we did a whole session on joined reports. There's some super cool things you can do with formulas using cross-block formulas. I really hope you use the power of joined reports. So let's talk about filters. There are a number of filters to help you get what you want to show on a report, on the report. The data has to be there, of course, but if you assume that the data is there, then we can filter and really fine tune what we're showing on the report. So depending on the report type, Salesforce gives us a number of standard filters, and it really just depends on the report type that you've chosen, how many are there. In this case, we're looking at an opportunity report type, and it looks like territory management has been enabled in this org. So there are territory management related filters, standard filters. And it's worth looking in these. Some of these standard filters have unusual choices in them. There's one on an opportunity history report that allows you to show deals that have gone backwards, which you wouldn't know it unless you sort of hunt around and look for these things. Now, we generally we need more than just the few standard filters that they give us. So we have the ability to do advanced filters, and you can have up to 20 advanced filters on a report. And the default is that those will all be connected with ands, but we don't always want that. So we have the ability, once you add more than one advanced filter, you can use filter logic, and you can say A or B. We have something very powerful called cross filters. We'll take a look at those. We have field-to-field filters, and we have a new item called personalized filters. We took a look at the row limit filters a few minutes ago. The personalized filters just came out in the spring release. Super interesting and cool, useful, very specific use case. But let's dive into advanced filters first. So you can have up to 20 per report. And typically you select a field and then you use one of the operators. And the list of operators is longer than you'd think. You want to scroll through, and you can do greater than, less than, contains, does not contain, starts with. There's a bunch of choices in there, but it's not always obvious that you can scroll. And then depending on the data type of the field that you're filtering on, you can either type in a value or you can select different types of things like a pick list. And I mentioned that Salesforce gives us filter logic, and we can do ands, ors, or nots. You can see I've got a screenshot here of 3 advanced filters. This is on an account report, and I've got the account type field contains partner. Billing country equals USA, comma, Canada. So that comma stands for an or in that series. And then we have industry equals agriculture or banking. But what we also see up here is that there's advanced filter logic that's been applied, and it's saying, give me 1 and 2 or 3. And you can use parentheses, you can use ors, you can nest the parentheses, and you can get very, very complex filters. If some of you are in a monster org, like NASA's org, you're in a monster org and 20 isn't enough, you can always write a custom formula field and put your complexity in a formula field and have it return true or false, and then include that formula field into as an advanced filter and just say equals true. So if 20 for some reason isn't enough, I've never hit that limit, but some of you might have, you can still use a formula field. Just always keep that formula fields are useful. Keep it in the back of your mind. One other thing to mention with filters is, just like with list views, we can take advantage of relative date ranges. There's a page in help that lists out these relative date values like yesterday, today, tomorrow. And there's some really interesting ones where I could say, give me all the deals that were created, give me all the leads that were created 7 weeks ago, or the last 7 weeks, or, you know, that sort of thing. And I've included a QR code to that file in help. The reference in help, it's called relative date filter reference. That's had many, many names over the years, but super useful to keep around. Just to dig into a couple of the filters specifically, there are field-to-field filters. These were added in the last couple of years. We can filter on number fields, date fields, and date time fields. And you can see a screenshot here of, it looks like it's an opportunity report. And we're saying, if the last modified date on a record is greater than the close date on the same record, that's a field-to-field filter. So that's probably bad if it's been modified after it's been closed. And what we could use is an operator for greater than. And there's a little pull down here in the filter where you can either filter on a value or you can filter on a field. And again, it just depends on the data type. So it's available for a couple of data types. If you have multi-currency enabled, currency fields aren't available here. That's unfortunate. The data types have to match for this to work. You can have up to 4 field-to-field filters per report. There's a couple of other little oddball notes, like it's not available in a joined report. Cross filters. When we did that session, I think it was the first Dōjō ever, we did fun with filters and we talked about cross filters. I'm trying to remember if we've done a whole session on cross filters or not. Maybe not, but they're so useful. So we can filter to see records with or without their related child records. So what we can do, and you can see here in the screenshot, I've got a report on accounts and there's nothing up my sleeve. I don't have anything other than accounts on this report, but cross filters let us filter with or without some child record. And I could say, give me all the accounts without contacts where the email is not equal to blank. Okay, that's a bit of a mouthful, but you can do cool things like that. You can have up to 3 cross filters per report. And this allows you to really dig in. And let's say that, you know, you're just looking for anomalies in the data. It could be you're looking for opportunities that don't have products, but, or let's talk about, how about accounts is a great thing. So something higher up in the food chain. So we could talk about, give me all the accounts that don't have assets, but do have cases. And you could create a report on accounts and you could use cross filters in 2 different ways that don't have without assets, but with cases. So that's somebody that may be wasting your support team's time, but they haven't bought anything, or there could just be an anomaly in your data. So cross filters work with all report types, and the objects available depend on lookup relationships. So in this case, we're reporting on the account objects. So whatever objects have a lookup or master detail pointing up to accounts, those will be available in the cross filter. So I've got a report started here. Again, this is on accounts. And just to show you that we can add a cross filter using action pull down here. And it's so elegantly simple. I could say, give me all the accounts without, and you could see all the things in this org. And it could be a custom object that has a lookup up to accounts. So I could say, give me all the accounts without cases. Let's do the example that I just said. And I could say, give me all the accounts without assets that have cases. And you can even go further. So I've just added 2 cross filters to this, but I could go further and I could say, give me all the accounts that don't have assets where it's a current asset, or the purchase date or install date, or doesn't have a serial number. You can basically use any of the fields on the asset object to further filter the cross filter. So super powerful. We talked about this in one of the recent, we did a Dōjō on the spring release, and we talked about this new feature called personalized filters. It's a dynamic report filter that allows the current user to just see data that they own, and own isn't the right word, data that they've been assigned to whatever field we're filtering on. So here's an example here. I've got a custom field called executive sponsor. And, once that data is filled in, you could use that on a report. So add an advanced filter on executive sponsor. And you could say equals. And if you use relative value, then you're given this choice of $user. So this works like a my filter, but it's on whatever lookup field to the user object that you have. So executive sponsor could be created by, could be last modified by. So it could be standard field, custom field. I think these are great. This has made, just given us another new thing to use in reporting. All right, so let's shift gears. Let's talk about summaries. So I said earlier, you can have up to 8 summaries at the top of a report. It'll just ignore, I was playing around before the Dōjō today, and I had something, I don't even know how many, 15 or 20 summaries on the report, but it'll just roll up the first 8. It basically stopped. In this case, the screenshot only has 7, or 6. But it basically just stopped after it hit 8. And when we're talking about summaries, basically any of the columns that appear in the sidebar of the Lightning Report Builder as a light blue color, those are numbers or numeric columns. And there are 5 different types of summaries that you can do: sum, average, max, min, or the newest one, median. So there are 2 other types of summaries that are available. There's the default one called row count, and then there's a one that was added in the last couple of years called unique. And you can see a screenshot over here where if you go to the action menu next to a column in the report builder, and you pick a column like industry, the bottommost choice there is to show the unique count. So what's great, that answers a question like, how many industries are we working with? Or, how many industries are represented in our pipeline? It'll show you the unique number of those. Now we do have the ability to toggle on and off. So as soon as a grouping's been added to a report, the toggle switches appear, and you can toggle on and off the subtotals and the grand totals depending on what your objective is for the report. I mentioned the stack summaries earlier. Just to recap these, once you've made a report, a matrix report, you're given this extra choice for stacked summaries. And just these are the same. This is the same snippet of a report, just shown both ways. So this is stacked. And if I come over here and toggle off the stack, basically what it does is it puts those summaries side by side. And just keep in mind that makes your report pretty wide if you go that path. we did a whole dojo on conditional formatting on both reports and dashboards. Just I think it was late last year. I really like using conditional formatting. I don't feel obligated to use 3 colors. You can absolutely show just 1 color if you want. And sometimes that's very like the right thing to do rather than making it super busy with lots of colors. So what you can do is these are available with at least 1 grouping and 1 summary column. You can have up to 3 conditional formatting, 3 columns that are conditional formatted per report. You can show 1, 2, or 3 colors. And what I could do is if I click an X here, it'll remove one of the colors. You have to have at least 2, but the background color of one of them, or actually probably all of them, could just be this one with the red line through it. So you can choose to basically have no color and just drop it down to 1, which I think really looks great. I did talk about an anomaly. If any of you are in life sciences and you really care about decimals, there are certainly other industries that care about decimals too. Decimals are ignored with conditional formatting. And I have an example. Let's see if I kept it. Did I keep it open? No, I did not. Okay, let's see if we can find it real quick just to show just this really odd thing with decimals. So I've got this report created, and you can see I've got some reds, the orangey yellow color, and the greens. And if I come in here, like to me, this is a problem, but this isn't the way that I expect it. But as long as you know what it is, you can work around it. So basically, I've set thresholds here, and I expect these to work differently. And if I come in, and you can see that my thresholds are set at 5 and 6. So less than or equal to 5 is red and 5 to 6 is orange. Well, that's not what's happening here, because less than or equal to 5 does not include 5.25. So on dashboard tables, we can do conditional formatting as well. And interestingly, those decimals work correctly, whereas these don't work correctly. And I don't know if it's a bug or if it's just some reality that they're ignored. So anyway, that's how you can come in here. You can add additional formatting rules. This is grayed out because I only have 1 column. I only have 1 summary item. If I come back here and I sum by something else, like the average and the max, I could come back here now and add additional conditional formatting on those other 2 fields that I just added. All right, so we have done many sessions in the dojo on formulas. This QR code, we did 3, 1, 2, 3, a series of 3, and we've done many others as well. And this will show you the 3, and you can actually find the others from this QR code. But basically, we have 3 types of formulas. We have row level formulas. You can have up to 1 per report, and those operate at the record level. We can have summary formulas. As long as the report is grouped by 1 column, we can add up to 5 summary formulas, and those have absolutely good uses. Like if you want to calculate a win ratio, you do it with a summary formula. We have cross-block formulas, which are only applicable to joined reports, and you can have many. It's something like 10 per block. So you could have at least 50 on a report. I may be getting the numbers wrong, but it's a very large number of formulas that you can do on a joined report. And cross-block formulas allow you to essentially, do math or concatenation across the blocks. This is a row level formula. This is a very simple example that I've shown a number of times. So on the case object, we're adding a column called case priority. The output is text, and based on the priority field values, high, we have an emoji output, medium, etc. There are hundreds of emojis that you can use. And emoji is just text. I could also have words in there if I wanted. There are other things you can do. Salesforce, when we made the move to Lightning, Salesforce gave us a really nice upgrade of the formula editor. I really like it. It's probably the nicest formula editor in all of Salesforce, is what we get on reporting in the Lightning Report Builder. So the last topic is charts, and charts become available only after you add your first grouping to a report. the add chart button wakes up, and we have 8 types of charts that we can choose from. In Lightning, this can only appear at the top of the report. I think they look beautiful, and there's some extra features available to us once we add one. Once you click on the add chart button, it'll draw a horizontal bar chart. You can click on the gear here, and you can choose from the other 7 chart types. You also have attributes down below, and it's worth learning about those, such as the ability to have a reference line. So if we come in here, I think I've got one. Of course, I've already closed a bunch of stuff. So let's just go back to the reports tab. Let's look at all open pipeline. This one has a chart on it. So, essentially while building the report, I just clicked on the toggle chart, which basically added a chart. And it's interesting, once I hide that, it remembers the chart. But if I come in here and edit this, okay, it's remembering that I have one. What I could do if I wanted to start over is come down and just click remove chart. That should flush it. So now on my report, I've got a report that's grouped by stage. Why don't we change this up? I'll group it by industry. Get rid of the other grouping. Because there's at least one grouping here, I can add a chart, and the default will be a horizontal bar. Now, based on the sorting, right now this is sorting alphabetically. That's the default. I could sort by the sum of the amounts. I could sort by the average amount. So which industry has the largest deal sizes, the average deal size? And I can sort that. If I click this again, it'll make it descending. Well, notice that the chart doesn't actually redraw itself. And there's a I don't know if it's a bug or what it is, but if I go ahead and save this, and I'll say chart attempt 2, and let's put this in a folder for today. Now watch what happens when so I've saved it, and now it's showing me. So it's just sort of a quirky thing. It can drive you crazy that the charts don't necessarily, you did it right, but it didn't redraw on the screen. If you save that and then basically run it again, you'll get the sort order that you wanted. But if I come back in here, there are a few other choices, sort of depending on the display as type that you chose. You can give it a title. This is my chart title. You can show a reference line. If we're looking for, we're going to abandon all these other industries if they're below $2 million. And I can come in here and I can change the color of the reference line if I want. And you can see that reference line appear. If you've got a quarterly target or something you're aiming for, just, add some emphasis to it. There are a couple of other things you can do. You can click over here and you can make this into a gray palette if you want, or a color safe palette. I'll just leave it as the default palette. I can choose to show the values on the bars, so you can see the black letters appearing here. 2 of the chart types are grayed out right now, and the reason is that those are stacked, and a stacked chart requires a second grouping. I just have one grouping over here. As soon as I add a second grouping, those become available. So the last thing to point out with this is, your users, we want to encourage them. They can play and they can modify the charts. Hopefully they don't overwrite your amazing reports and that you've saved them in read-only folders. But they can come in here and they can hover over. If they click on one of these chart items, it'll actually rerun the report filtered against the item that they click on. So it's kind of a powerful thing that you can teach them, so that they can just come in here and just look around. And if I want to undo all this, just click on it a second time on the same item, and then it just reruns it back at the beginning. All right, so I have a couple of quick examples. We're looking for a list of our partners in the US or in Canada, or are in agriculture or banking industries. Blah. It's like, wow, there's something going on here. There's a lot of formula, a lot of filters that are required. Well, it's really not that many. But because I've got an and I've got an or and I've got, just a lot going on here with partners, What I can do is I can add those as individual. So I've got a report on accounts. I cleaned up the standard filters. I've added 3 additional filters. I talked about this example earlier. I've got the type that contains the word partner, billing country equals USA or Canada, and industry equals agriculture or banking. And then I just came back up to this. I chose to add filter logic. Now I can remove the filter logic. If I remove this logic now, these just revert to the and. So these are basically all separated by and, essentially in the logic. But if I come in here and I add filter logic, I can say 1 and 2 and change this and to an or. And these can become really quite complex. You could have, because you can have up to 20 advanced filters, you could have many parentheses and use the word and or not throughout.
Hi, David. So Karen said they're hitting a bit of a snag. They're trying to display only the unique count of contacts in report output and dashboard, and they only see show unique count on a column, which is not a selectable item.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's a great question. So let's look at this particular report. And if I come down here, I can choose show unique count, and that'll add another summary column. So for this particular example, I'm going to actually just shy away from, I'm going to just show, just so we have more data to look at. I'm going to get rid of my filters. And if I run this, you can see the unique industry is showing here. I wonder, so if we go ahead and save this as, let's call this blah, 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 because that's a really cool name. And if I come back to my list of reports, I just make sure you guys know this, that you can push a report to a dashboard using the action menu to the right of the report. If I click add to dashboard, let's just see what we can do. So I'm going to add it to a new dashboard. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's too funny. I can't even spell blah, blah, blah correctly. And let's see what we get to do. So can we show the unique count? So if I add a grouping, let's say on, so this was how many industries are represented. So how would that appear? I'm trying to think how we could show that. Because it would basically be, it's sort of like it's data across the data set. How many people named Bob are there? How many industries are there? How many countries are represented? Huh. The only thing I can think of just off the top of my head, I haven't played with it, is if we were to come back here and you were to add a formula to your report. So if you have your report as it's grouped by something, so let's say I have this group by industry. I haven't played with this, but it'd be really interesting to figure out. So once you add a grouping on a report and you come at a summary formula, you do have the ability, and this isn't like the best example in the world, but if I come in and I search on industry here, you do have the ability to choose unique here, and you can add a summary formula. And I wonder if that might give you an option for adding it to a dashboard. So not using the column way, but it'd be interesting to hear if you're able to figure that out. So I haven't tried it, Karen, but I hope you can figure it out. All right. So very quickly, we'll do another one here. Need a list of accounts with one deals over $1 million. So I've got this started here, and I've got an account. I've got a roll-up summary field showing me the accounts that should have over $1 million. And if I come in, what I could do is and this one deal would be individual deals. So these are basically, this is going to give me some barometer, like, do they even have a chance of having a deal of over $1 million? But if I come into my filters and add a cross filter, Oh, I've already got it here. Okay, so I've got accounts with opportunities, and I've added a sub-filter to my cross filter. So I cleaned up, I created a report on accounts, and we're using a cross filter to say, give me all the accounts that have opportunities that are one and over $1 million. And this is where the power of using the sub filters comes in on a cross filter. So this is my list of all the accounts in my system that have deals at least $1 million in size. So I really like this, not only cross filters, but the ability to dig deeper on that. Okay, well, we've gone through a bunch of different topics today. We talked about the 4 report formats. We talked about filters and their importance. We talked about summaries, a little bit about conditional highlighting. We put our toe in the water with formulas. I do hope you go take a look at those on the reportings tab if you're interested in formulas. It's probably the best skill set to develop as a report and dashboard writer. Just keep working on formulas. They will pay you back in dividends forever. We also took a quick look at charts, but we have a special guest coming on March 29th. So Aaron Creer, if you haven't seen him, he speaks at Dreamin' events and has spoken at Dreamforce many times. I've just crossed paths with him at Snowforce out in Salt Lake City in Utah, which was an amazing event. But Aaron presented there, he talked about architecture and reporting. He's going to be our guest on March 29th, Dōjō. So it'll be less frantic because it'll be the two of us chatting, geeking out about reporting stuff, and then him presenting on something that's of interest to him. So we'd love to have you join us for that. We do have just a couple minutes for any additional Q&A that you might have. I appreciate all of you being here today. It's so great to see all these friendly names. I really hope I can meet all of you in person at some point at one of these events. But I genuinely wish you luck on your reporting journey. Any other questions? Have I missed anything, Kyle?
No, I think we have done a good job at fielding them as they come in.
Thank you for keeping an eye on those. Okay, well, looks like there's another comment. Okay, thank you. You're welcome, Roshana. So guys, I'm so excited for you and each of you in your reporting journeys. And Alexander, hope to see you at Dreamforce again. That'd be great. Best of luck to everyone. We'll see you on the next Dashboard Dojo. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, everyone.